Welcome to the Funeral Channel Network podcast, and thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We are so thrilled you're here, our resident learner.
Yes, absolutely. Thrilled to have you with us today.
Now, before we really get into the heavy lifting of today's material, I want you to step into a specific memory with me for a second.
Oh, setting the scene. I like it.
Right. So think about the last time you walked into a memorial service. Just really put yourself there. The very first thing that made you pause, the first thing that genuinely caught in your throat, it probably wasn't the eulogy.
No, usually not.
And it wasn't the music playing softly in the background. And it certainly wasn't, the floral arrangements.
Right, as beautiful as those can be.
Exactly. It was almost undeniably a large, vibrant, 2 by 3 foot photograph of the person being remembered. Just this massive visual anchor standing right there in the room with you.
It's so true. It's almost always the first thing you look for.
Yeah. And so today we are unpacking the psychological engine behind the modern funeral poster, because there's so much more to it than just a picture on a board.
There really is. I mean, it is entirely human to seek out that visual anchor. We're profoundly visually driven creatures.
Oh, for sure. We need to see things.
Right. And when you enter an environment steeped in uncertainty or grief, your brain immediately just scans the room for a familiar face.
Yeah.
It's like a biological imperative to seek connection.
It's like a grounding mechanism, right?
Exactly. Finding that face, even if it's just printed on a large canvas, it instantly grounds the nervous system. So we are going to explore the mechanics of that grounding today.
I can't wait.
We're looking at the evolution, the highly specific architectural design, and the profound psychological impact of these large format visual displays. And this is all drawing on a really comprehensive essay titled Visual Tributes, The Art of Funeral Posters and Banners.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if we look at the historical baseline, funerals are universally understood as incredibly solemn, quiet, formal events, or at least they used to be.
Right, the traditional model.
Yeah, the atmosphere was historically designed to be heavy, you wore black, you spoke in hushed tones, and you strictly mourned a loss.
Very Victorian in a way.
Exactly. But the current landscape has fundamentally shifted. We are moving the dial from the strict mourning of a death toward the active, vibrant celebration of a unique life.
It's a massive cultural pivot.
It is. And what I find so compelling is that these visual displays aren't just like a byproduct of that shift. They are the primary engine driving it.
What's fascinating here is how deeply this ties into the broader cultural zeitgeist regarding how we process memory. Because historically, the visual elements at a funeral they were severely limited.
They really were.
You would walk into a parlor or a chapel, and you might see a single, simple framed portrait positioned near the casket. And it was usually a very stoic, formal photograph.
Right, like an old studio portrait where the subject isn't smiling at all.
Yes, wearing their stiffest formal clothing. It communicated a deference to death rather than a reflection of life.
But wait, photography has been accessible to the general public since, the late 1800s?
Hopefully, yeah.
People had boxes full of candid, smiling family photos for decades and decades. So why did it take over a century for funerals to move past that single, stoic studio portrait?
That is such a brilliant question, and it really comes down to the sociological function of a funeral in the early 20th century versus today.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Well, for a long time, the funeral wasn't actually about the individual's personality.
Yeah.
It was about the community's relationship with mortality itself.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the stoic portrait served as a memento mori, a reminder of death. You weren't supposed to be distracted by the deceased's hobbies or their sense of humor. The formality was a shield against the existential terror of loss.
That makes so much sense. So it was essentially saying, this person has crossed over to the serious business of the afterlife.
Exactly.
Rather than saying, look how much fun this person had at the beach last summer.
Precisely. The photograph was a symbol of the end. And the only other visual artifacts back then were typically small printed keepsakes.
Like prayer cards.
Right, prayer cards or memorial bookmarks, items that are inherently private. You tuck a prayer card into a Bible, you look down at it in your lap.
It's a very isolated experience.
It is. It's an internalized experience of grief. But today, we have transitioned into these highly sophisticated, large format posters and banners.
It's a completely different world now.
Night and day. We're talking about massive displays incorporating multiple life stage photographs, complex graphics, and personalized text. We've moved from a singular formal acknowledgement of a death to demanding a comprehensive visual narrative of an entire human journey.
A visual narrative. I love that phrase. Let's take that a step further, because the scale difference here isn't just an aesthetic choice, is it?
No, not at all.
It completely changes the sociology of the room. Like you said, a small prayer card isolates you, but a 24 by 36-inch poster mounted on an easel at the front of a room, that totally democratizes the grieving experience.
It really does. It brings everyone in.
Right. It ensures that even the guests seated at the very back of the venue, like the people who maybe only knew the deceased tangentially and are sitting in the overflow folding chairs, they are visually connected to the exact same tribute as the immediate family in the front row.
Everyone's chin is up.
Yes, everyone is engaged in a shared gaze.
And that shared gaze is foundational to modern community healing. You aren't just reading a poem by yourself in your lap. You are participating in an audience's collective focus upon a life.
It feels so much more unified.
It is. And the timeline aspect of these modern collages is vital too. It's no longer just a headshot representing the end.
Right, it's a whole story.
Exactly. It's a visual chronological mapping. You see childhood, early family life, career milestones, quiet moments of joy. It's the complete human experience rendered in high definition.
You know, it totally makes me think of the evolution of movie posters. Hear me out on this, because I think the mechanics are identical.
Oh, I'm intrigued. Walk me through the mechanics of that.
Okay, so if you look at movie posters from the very early days of Hollywood, like the Golden Age, a poster might literally just be a massive painted headshot of the lead actor.
Right, just a floating head.
Exactly, just Humphrey Bogart or Clark Gable staring at you, maybe with their name in huge font at the bottom. It tells you who is in the movie, but it tells you absolutely nothing about the narrative, the pacing, or the emotional stakes of the film itself.
It's relying purely on formal recognition.
Right, which is so similar to this stoic, formal funeral portrait of the past.
The parallels are definitely there.
But look at a modern movie poster today. It is a highly engineered, dynamic collage. At a single glance, without reading a word of text, it gives you the genre, the tone, the setting, the supporting cast, and a hint of the central conflict.
That's very true.
You look at it and your brain immediately categorizes it. Like, oh, this is a fast-paced sci-fi thriller, or this is a quiet, melancholic indie romance. Funeral posters are doing the exact same semiotic heavy lifting now, but for a human life.
Wow, that is a remarkably apt analogy.
Right. When you walk through the doors, that poster immediately tells you the genre of the person's life. It introduces their supporting cast of family and friends. It establishes the tone before anyone even picks up a microphone to speak.
Because the underlying mechanism in both scenarios is rapid emotional storytelling.
Exactly.
When you cross the threshold into a memorial service, your brain is desperately seeking context. Was this person a boisterous, adventurous outdoorsman who lived out loud?
Or were they a quiet, devoted matriarch who found profound joy in her garden?
Right. The visual narrative communicates that tone instantaneously. It completely bypasses the analytical brain and speaks directly to the emotional center.
Okay, so if these posters are acting as the visual, genre-defining storyboards of a person's life, then the physical architecture, like the actual canvas they are printed on and where that canvas is placed, must be incredibly important.
Oh, it's critical.
We can't just slap a collage onto a piece of flimsy printer paper and expect it to command a room. Let's dive into the physical materials and sizes, because the variations detailed in the sources are fascinating.
The physical formats are deeply intentional, and the choice of medium is directly dictated by the environment. We're typically looking at two distinct categories here.
Okay, what's the first one?
First, you have posters, which are usually printed on high-quality, heavyweight cardstock or premium photographic paper, and they're often mounted on foam core for rigidity.
So they can stand up on an easel without flopping over?
Exactly. And the sizing for those ranges from more intimate formats, like 16 by 20 inches, scaling up to the standard large format of 24 by 36 inches.
That's a pretty substantial size.
It is. But then, completely distinct from posters, you have banners.
Banners are an entirely different architectural element.
They really are. Banners are printed on highly durable, flexible materials, usually heavy-duty vinyl or thick, weather-resistant fabric.
Like the kind of thing you'd see at a convention or a street fair?
Very similar, yes.
Yeah.
They can span several feet in width and height, and they are engineered specifically to withstand both indoor and outdoor environments.
Okay, so why does the choice of medium matter so intensely?
Because the material has to match the volume of the space.
Right. Because if you're having a small private gathering for 10 people in a very intimate wood-paneled funeral chapel, unfurling a massive 6-foot glossy vinyl banner is going to feel aggressively out of place.
It would completely overpower the emotional intimacy of the room. It would swallow the room whole.
Yeah, it would just be too loud, visually speaking.
Exactly. In a small chapel, a single 18 by 24-inch matte poster resting on a tasteful wooden easel is perfectly scaled. It provides that visual anchor we discussed without screaming for attention. It respects the quiet acoustics of the space.
But consider the inverse of that.
Right, imagine a sprawling, cavernous cathedral with vaulted ceilings. Or, which is increasingly common today, an outdoor celebration of life held in a massive public park pavilion.
Oh yeah, outdoor memorials are huge right now.
They are. And in those sprawling, acoustically open environments, an 18 by 24-inch poster completely disappears.
It just becomes a postage stamp.
Exactly. It fails to anchor anything. That is exactly where the massive vinyl banner becomes not just an option, but a spatial necessity.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting to me. The idea that in those large or outdoor spaces, banners actually function as crucial wayfinding tools,
Yes.
which is something I hadn't even considered until we really started unpacking the source material. But if you think about the cognitive load of grief, it makes total sense.
Expand on that cognitive load aspect. How do you see the banner functioning there?
Well, think about the physiological reality of attending a funeral. Whether you are an immediate family member or just a friend, your cortisol levels are elevated. You might be anxious about seeing people you haven't seen in decades.
Right, there's a lot of social anxiety mixed in with the grief.
Exactly. You are processing the finality of death. And when the human brain is under that kind of emotional trauma or stress, working memory is severely compromised. Executive function takes a massive hit.
It does. You're in survival mode.
So you don't want to be wandering around a massive 50-acre public park trying to read tiny pavilion numbers, wondering, is this the right cluster of picnic tables for Uncle John's memorial?
No, absolutely not.
Your brain just doesn't have the bandwidth for a scavenger hunt. A large, vibrant vinyl banner instantly acts as a beacon. It solves a logistical problem while simultaneously offering an emotional welcome.
That is such a vital distinction.
Yeah.
It is an accessibility tool for a traumatized brain. It guides people gently and unambiguously.
It says, you're in the right place, you're safe here.
Exactly. And beyond just wayfinding, these large banners serve to unify the aesthetic of a disparate environment.
How so?
Well, a park pavilion is inherently chaotic visually, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are trees, trash cans, other park goers walking their dogs.
Right.
A large banner, especially when it's designed to match the smaller printed programs in the floral arrangement, forces a cohesive, highly designed perimeter. It temporarily claims the public space and sanctifies it for the purpose of the memorial.
That's beautiful. It creates a sacred space out of a public one.
It really does.
But, the sheer accessibility of all this is what blows my mind. Because let's look at the timeline of printing technology. 20 or 30 years ago, getting a high-resolution, full-color, massive vinyl banner printed for a one-off weekend event would have been an absolute nightmare.
Oh, it would have been nearly impossible for an average family.
It would have been prohibitively expensive, it would require a specialized commercial print house, and it would have taken weeks. That was the kind of logistical flex only a massive corporation could afford for a major trade show.
You're absolutely right. The democratization of large format printing technology is the silent partner driving this entire cultural shift.
And we totally take it for granted now.
We do, because we live in an era of instant digital gratification. But the mechanics of printing a 36-inch photograph used to be incredibly prohibitive. You were dealing with complex CMYK color separations, expensive film negatives, massive offset presses.
It was a whole industrial process.
Exactly. Now, with the advent of advanced wide-format inkjet technology and digital-to-plate printing, families can order these massive personalized items quickly, affordably, and with just breathtaking image clarity.
So the technological friction has basically vanished.
Completely vanished. And that allows the cultural desire for highly personalized memorials to fully flourish.
So if we take all of that, the psychological anchoring, the spatial dynamics, the printing technology, and we combine it, what is the actual mechanism at play for the attendee?
What do you mean?
Well, if I walk into a bright, sunny park and the absolute first thing I see is a massive, colorful 6-foot vinyl banner of my friend laughing out loud, how does that actively rewire my psychological footing compared to walking into a dark, hushed room with a tiny 8x10 photo sitting next to a somber guest book?
Ah, I see. It completely overrides your default script.
My default script.
Yes. When you walk into the darkroom with a small photo, your brain accesses the traditional script. Be quiet, look down, suppress joy, perform solemnity.
Right, play the part of the mourner.
Exactly. But when you encounter the bright, massive outdoor banner, the scale and the material command the physical space. And in doing so, they explicitly give you permission to feel a different spectrum of emotion.
It breaks the rules in a good way.
The banner signals that this is an open, celebratory space. It invites a lighter, more reflective, perhaps even joyful approach to the gathering. The physical presence of the medium sets the stage.
That makes total sense.
But, and this is crucial, while the material commands the physical space, it is the microscopic decisions made regarding the design and imagery on that material that ultimately dictate the emotional resonance.
Right, a giant piece of blank vinyl doesn't comfort anyone.
No, it doesn't.
It's what's actually printed on it that matters. Which brings us to the actual anatomy of a meaningful tribute, the granular design process.
Let's get into it.
What are the specific visual components required to build these modern narrative posters?
Well, it is a highly deliberate artistic architecture. When you deconstruct these visual tributes, several core components emerge.
Okay, what's verse 1?
First, there is always a focal point portrait. This is the structural anchor of the entire design. It is usually the largest image, and crucially, it almost always shows the person in a state of joy or engagement.
Smiling brightly or something like that.
Yes, smiling brightly, or perhaps caught mid-laugh while participating in a favorite hobby. This isn't accidental. It is the definitive image that represents the essence of how the family wants their loved one to be immortalized in memory.
It's like the thesis statement of their life.
Exactly. That is the perfect way to phrase it. And then orbiting that focal point, you have the collage of life stage photos.
Right, the supporting evidence for the thesis statement.
Yes. This is where the multidimensional narrative comes to life. The baby photos, the awkward teenage years, the wedding day, the career achievements.
All the chapters of the story.
And finally, you have the grounding text elements, the full legal name, the dates of birth and death, and usually an anchoring phrase like in loving memory or celebrating the life of.
But the psychology goes so much deeper than just dropping some photos onto a white background, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The background is everything.
The use of background designs and symbols plays a massive role in the storytelling. It's visual shorthand. If the background is a sprawling sunset over an ocean, you instantly know this person was connected to the water.
Yeah.
If it's a dense forest or a mountain range, you know they were a nature enthusiast.
It is entirely about visual shorthand because the brain processes imagery 60,000 times faster than text.
60,000 times.
Wow. Yes. So before you even read the person's name, the background environment tells you where their soul felt most at home.
That's incredibly powerful.
And then you integrate specific iconography, subtle musical notes woven into the border, religious symbols, or sports emblems. And perhaps most importantly, we have to talk about the physiological impact of color theory.
Okay, color theory at a funeral. I love this. Explain how that actually works in this context.
Well, color isn't just aesthetic, it's physiological.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Different wavelengths of light, which is essentially what color is, trigger different responses in the human autonomic nervous system.
So it actually changes our biology in the moment.
It does. If a family is designing a poster for someone known for their gentle, calming, nurturing spirit, they will intuitively lean toward soft pastels, light blues, muted greens, soft pinks.
Because those colors are calming.
Exactly. Those specific colors have been shown to literally lower heart rates and reduce anxiety. They create a soothing atmosphere for the grieving guests.
That is fascinating.
Conversely, if the poster's for someone with a vibrant, loud, larger-than-life personality, the design might feature bold crimson, deep oranges, or striking purples. The colors themselves act as a surrogate for the energy of the deceased.
I want to paint a mental picture for you, our listener, just to really solidify how powerful this specific architecture can be.
Please do.
Imagine you are walking into a service for your grandfather. You cross the threshold, and there, mounted on a beautiful easel, is a massive 24 by 36-inch poster.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
The background isn't white. It's a bold, vibrant wash of deep oranges and purples depicting his favorite mountain range at sunrise. The focal photo isn't him in a stiff suit. It's a huge, incredibly crisp photo of him laughing, wearing his worn-out hiking gear, dirt on his hands, looking directly at the camera.
I love that image.
And orbiting that central joy are smaller photos, a timeline of his military service in stark black and white, a faded, color-shifted photo from his wedding day, him holding you as a newborn baby. And anchoring the entire composition at the bottom is his favorite scripture passage in elegant typography.
When you construct that image in the mind's eye, you can immediately feel the emotional weight of it.
You really can.
It completely transcends a basic notification of death. It is a highly curated, deeply specific celebration of a unique existence. It demands that you engage with his life, not just his passing.
It does. But, looking at all these design requirements, the aspect ratios, the color theory, the timeline balance, I'm struck by how unbelievably stressful this must be for a family.
Oh, the logistics are daunting.
Right. You have a family in peak grief, dealing with funeral directors, caterers, family drama, and their own profound heartbreak. And suddenly they are expected to act as an art director and a graphic designer.
It's a lot to ask.
If there weren't professional services stepping in to bridge this gap, I imagine this entire trend would have died out purely from the logistical friction.
You've hit on a critical pressure point in modern mourning. The expectation for a polished, museum-quality visual tribute can easily morph from a beautiful desire into a crushing burden.
Exactly.
The cognitive load of learning graphic design software while navigating the initial shock of grief is unsustainable. This is exactly why the ecosystem of professional memorial design services has exploded.
The source mentions one specifically, right?
Yes, providers like the funeral program site exist solely to remove the technical friction from this process.
Because nobody wants to be fighting with a crashing word processor or trying to figure out why a photo looks like a blurry Minecraft block while they are simultaneously trying to write a eulogy.
Precisely. The technical challenges of large format printing are severe. If you take a standard photo from a 15-year-old digital camera and try to stretch it to 36 inches across, you're going to end up with severe pixelation.
It will look distorted and cheap.
It will. Professional services understand the mechanics of DPI dots per inch and vector versus raster graphics. They provide customizable pre-balanced templates where the hierarchy of visual information is already solved.
They do the heavy lifting.
They know exactly where the text should sit so it doesn't obscure a face in the collage.
Yeah.
They manage the bleed lines so nothing vital is chopped off during the printing process.
They absorb the technical execution so the family can simply be the curators.
Exactly. The family is freed from the burden of formatting and software troubleshooting. They can focus purely on the emotional labor of curating the memories, selecting the photos that matter, choosing the anchoring phrase, remembering the stories behind the images.
Which brings up a really vital psychological point, the curation process itself. The act of a family sitting down around a dining room table and choosing those specific photos isn't just an administrative chore to check off the funeral planning list.
No, it is far more than that.
It actually serves a profound function.
Yeah.
And that moves us into the emotional engine of these visual tributes, the mechanics of healing and shared reflection.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of narrative psychology, human beings process trauma by constructing stories.
Okay, break that down for me.
When a sudden loss shatters our reality, our brain scrambles to make sense of the chaos. For the family, the very act of sifting through old shoeboxes of physical photos or scrolling back through a decade of digital camera rolls forces them to actively engage with the narrative of the person's life.
So it's an active, structured form of grief work.
It is. It's a therapeutic process.
I just imagine that dining room table scene. There are inevitably a lot of tears, but there is also a sudden burst of laughter. Like, oh my gosh, I completely forgot about that ridiculous hat he wore on the fishing trip in '98.
Exactly. It forces a psychological transition. It pulls the family's focus away from the sterile reality of the hospital bed or the funeral home and immerses them back into the vibrant reality of the life lived.
It rebuilds the deceased person in the minds of the family, not as a victim of mortality, but as the protagonist of their own epic story.
Beautifully said. And then, once that curated narrative is printed and deployed into the physical space of the venue, it performs a similar psychological operation on the guests.
How does it affect the guests?
Well, when attendees encounter these displays, it evokes a complex spectrum of emotion. The grief is present, yes, but the visual evidence of a life fully lived introduces profound gratitude, deep reflection, and genuine joy. It forcefully shifts the tone from mournful silence to active celebration.
Let's talk about the specific spatial geography of where these posters are placed, because it seems like where you position the tribute dictates exactly how it functions emotionally during the service.
Geography in a ritual space is everything. There are 3 primary placements: and each serves a distinct psychological purpose.
Okay, let's go through them. What's the first?
First, placing the poster at the entrance on an easel. This functions as the threshold. When you cross from the secular world outside into the sacred space of the memorial, the poster is the gatekeeper.
You see the face, you register the tone.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
your emotional posture is immediately oriented to the purpose of the gathering.
It's the transition zone.
Yeah.
And the second placement mentioned in the source is on a memorial table. Let's talk about how that works.
A memorial table is incredibly powerful because it transcends a flat image and creates a three-dimensional physical shrine.
A shrine, yeah.
The poster serves as the backdrop, the vertical anchor, but it is surrounded horizontally by tactile chronological artifacts.
Like what kind of artifacts?
A lit candle, fresh flowers, a folded flag, military medals, a battered favorite novel, a cherished baseball glove. It becomes a tactile representation of the person's passions.
That invites so much interaction.
It does. It invites guests to step close, to look at the details, to almost interact with the memory.
And the third placement is near the casket or urn at the front of the room.
This is perhaps the most functionally vital placement during the formal ceremony.
Really? Why is that?
When the visual tribute is positioned near the casket or the urn, it provides the seated audience with a continuous, comforting visual anchor. Think about the mechanics of attending a service.
Okay.
During a 15-minute spoken eulogy, or during a long musical interlude, guests naturally need somewhere to rest their eyes.
That's true. You don't always know where to look.
And staring continuously at a closed casket or an urn can be psychologically grueling. It reinforces the finality of the loss. Having a vibrant, smiling, life-size portrait positioned right next to it gives the eye a sanctuary.
A sanctuary for the eyes. I love that.
It allows the listener to hear the words of the eulogy while looking at the living face of the person being described.
I want to focus on what happens after the formal ceremony, though. After the eulogies are done and everyone moves into the reception hall, the gathering where people are awkwardly balancing plates of food and holding cups of coffee.
Ah, the reception.
Yeah, I was thinking about how these large posters function in that specific space, and they really act like a communal hearth or campfire.
A communal hearth. That's a powerful metaphor. How does the poster function as the fire?
Well, consider the sociology of a funeral reception. They are inherently, uniquely awkward.
Oh, they can be incredibly awkward.
You have people from entirely disparate chapters of the deceased person's life forced into a single room. You have the person's current coworkers who don't know the family at all. You have college roommates who haven't seen each other in 20 years. You have neighbors.
It's a collision of different social spheres.
Exactly. And people often have no idea what to say, where to stand, or how to bridge the gap. But if you place this large, rich, highly detailed visual narrative poster in the center of the room, it acts as a magnetic gathering point.
People naturally gravitate toward it.
They gravitate toward the fire, they stand around it, they hold their coffee, and they point. A coworker points to a photo and says, "Wait, I didn't know he played the guitar."
And the college roommate sitting next to him says, "Oh yeah, we had a terrible band in 1985.
Yes. It provides an instant universal icebreaker. It gives people a script to start sharing stories with complete strangers, forging immediate connections through the shared proxy of the poster.
That is a brilliant sociological observation. The poster absorbs the social friction of the room.
It totally does.
It gives people permission to interact without the pressure of small talk. It transforms an isolated internal feeling of grief into a highly social, communal experience of storytelling.
It does the conversational heavy lifting for a room full of emotionally exhausted people.
Exactly. It facilitates the healing community. But eventually, the reception concludes.
The food is put away, the chairs are folded up.
The guests go home to their own lives. But the massive visual narrative that was engineered for that specific day doesn't just evaporate. It has a life cycle that extends far beyond the venue doors.
Which brings us to the lasting legacy, the concept of keepsakes and how this translates into the digital age.
This is where we see the true long-term archival value of these tributes, because these posters are emphatically not treated like disposable event signage.
Right, you don't just throw them in the recycling bin when the service is over.
No, never. Instead, they undergo a profound transformation in their meaning and function. They transition from being public displays into deeply cherished private heirlooms.
They shrink back down from the public sphere into the intimacy of the family home.
Exactly. Families will frequently take these large, professionally printed posters have them custom framed, and hang them in their homes as a permanent piece of memorial art.
And what if it's too big? Like a 36-inch poster is huge for a living room.
Right, if it's simply too large to display permanently, they are archived meticulously.
Mm-hmm.
They are stored carefully in cedar chests or closets, alongside the smaller funeral programs, the signed guest book, and other tactile memorial items.
So the object goes from being a loud public declaration of a life to a quiet, intimate family artifact that can be revisited during anniversaries or moments of quiet reflection.
Exactly.
And what I find so compelling is how the physical object seamlessly bridges into the digital realm. Because we don't just exist in physical space anymore, our memories are largely digital.
We live in a hybrid reality, and our mourning rituals reflect that. The original high-resolution digital design files used to print the poster are rarely discarded.
They keep the files.
Oh, always. They are often emailed or shared via cloud links with extended family members who were geographically or financially unable to attend the physical service.
That's an incredibly poignant accessibility feature for families spread across the globe.
It is. Additionally, these rich high-res digital files are uploaded to online memorial pages, genealogy websites, or permanent digital family archives.
So the poster, which was engineered for a very specific 2-hour physical gathering, achieves a kind of immortality.
It becomes a permanent, tangible symbol of memory in the physical world and an indestructible asset in the digital world.
I want to pose a thought about the democratization of this legacy. Because if we look at the trajectory we've mapped out today, as hyper-personalization becomes the absolute unquestioned standard in modern funerals, the reliance on these rich, visually dynamic displays is only going to grow.
Undoubtedly.
We are entering an era where everyone gets to have their life summarized like a blockbuster movie poster.
Yes, the democratization of legacy is profound. You no longer have to be royalty or a famous historical figure or incredibly wealthy to have your life's narrative beautifully preserved, professionally balanced, and curated for future generations.
The technology allows everyday lives to be elevated to the status of profound historical documents.
However, I think we have to ask ourselves, is there a psychological cost to this hyper-curation?
A psychological cost.
Yes. Does the pressure to create a polished, museum-quality, perfectly balanced visual tribute force families to gloss over the messy, complex, perhaps difficult realities of a person's life?
Oh, that is a fascinating tension. The Instagramification of death.
The Instagramification of death, yes. Are we, in a sense, curating these lives almost too perfectly, creating a sanitized version of the deceased?
Because you're right, nobody puts the photo of the terrible argument or the massive failure or the difficult years on the memorial poster.
No, they don't.
It is an aggressively curated highlight reel, but honestly, I think in the immediate aftermath of a death, when the family is standing at the bottom of a crater of grief, that sanitized highlight reel is exactly what they need to survive the day.
This is a very fair assessment.
The nuanced, messy, complex reality of the person can be processed in therapy or in quiet conversations years later. But for that one day in that venue, maybe they need the superhero version of their loved one on that poster just to get through it.
I think you're absolutely right. The poster isn't meant to be an objective biographical documentary. It is a tool for emotional survival and celebration. It serves the immediate psychological needs of the living.
It's functional art.
It is. And looking forward, the technology will only continue to advance, making these displays even more immersive. We are already seeing the integration of dynamic digital screens, looping video memoirs, and augmented reality alongside these printed materials.
Oh, wow. Augmented reality memorial.
It's coming. The fundamental human desire to be remembered accurately and holistically isn't going to change, but our tools for projecting that memory will become infinitely sharper. This fundamentally changes the archival baseline for how future generations will document and remember their ancestors.
Think about the difference in the genealogical experience.
How do you mean?
Right now, if you look up your great-great-grandfather on an ancestry website, you might just see a name, a blurry scan of a census document from 1890, and a date of death.
Right. Very clinical.
You know he existed as a data point. But imagine future generations looking back at a fully realized, beautifully designed, high-resolution visual tribute of you.
It changes everything.
They won't just know you existed. They will know what made you laugh, what your passions were, what colors represented your spirit. It's the difference between knowing a fact and knowing a person.
It's the difference between genealogy and true legacy.
So to synthesize this entire journey we've been on today, we have seen how the visual architecture of mourning has radically transformed.
It really has.
We've moved from the stoic, simple, easily overlooked memento mori of the past into an era of massive, highly personalized visual narratives.
It's a complete paradigm shift.
These large format posters and banners are no longer just an aesthetic afterthought or decorative dressing. They are the emotional anchors of the room.
They actively dictate the psychological landscape of modern memorials.
Exactly. They guide the tone, they absorb the social awkwardness to spark genuine connection, and they provide a lasting, beautiful archive of a human life that spans both the physical and digital realms.
They are, at their absolute core, a testament to the fact that every single human life is complex, multi-layered, and entirely unique, and that such profound uniqueness deserves a canvas large enough and vibrant enough to truly hold it.
Absolutely. So, listener, the next time you find yourself crossing the threshold into a celebration of life, I want you to pause for just a moment.
Just take a breath.
Don't just glance at the poster to confirm you're in the right pavilion or chapel. Really, truly look at the visual tribute in front of you. Appreciate the intentionality behind the chosen colors, the background imagery, the specific chronological flow of the timeline.
There's so much effort there.
Recognize the profound healing journey that the family undertook, sitting around a table with a box of photos to curate and engineer that exact narrative for you to witness. Let the poster do its job.
And as you reflect on the mechanics of that curation, it raises a final, deeply personal question to consider.
Ooh, what's that?
If a loved one had to design a 24 by 36-inch visual tribute of your life, right now, today, based purely on the photos currently sitting on your phone and the passions you pursue in your daily life, what would the background be?
Wow.
What singular quote would anchor the bottom of the frame? And ultimately, what specific story would that poster tell to a room full of people?
Oof. That is a question that will absolutely stay with you. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking questions, keep looking closer at the world around you, and we will catch you next time.